All right, I'm back again for part two. One of the things that I meant to mention earlier as I went back over and I looked at my notes was the fact that often in the pricing, we would want to price a higher price to somebody that we felt like could pay more and a lower price to somebody that we felt like might not be able to do so. There's a real danger in that, and the danger is that somebody you know wants to hire you and they know you did it for John Doe at X price, and you try to charge them something different, they're not necessarily going to tell you they know. They're just going to go away and talk bad about you, that you're cheating people, that you charge different prices for different people. So I think it's important that you go ahead and work out your packages. You need to have a package that's one camera, a package that's two cameras, a package that's three cameras, a package that shoots just snippets, a package that shoots just interviews, a package that does a little of both, and a package that does everything of everything that takes place that day. And so you are just selling different packages to different price ranges without actually making people feel like you're taking advantage of them, like you're selling one really high package, to a person who can't afford it, or however, you know what I'm saying. You just don't want to be in a situation where you're pricing the same thing to two different people at two different prices, because that will definitely come back to bite you, and it's never pretty when somebody's angry. Being able to protect your reputation, I think, is super important, and that's something that I want to talk about. And that does address a couple of different things. One, it really addresses your personal character. And I know you would think, well, why does that have anything to do with it? People do judge you. Whether you believe they're supposed to or not, people do judge you. They look at what you wear. They look at the language that you use. And so I never would use profanity. I don't curse anyway, but I would never use profanity in the face of a client, even if the client is cursing, because it doesn't set an acceptable standard for a business person. You want to always be above board, and if you curse on your own time, that's fine. That's your business. But when you're in front of a client, you need to be professional at all points. You need to be courteous. You need to honor their requests. You need to document their requests so they feel like at the end of whatever's said, they know what they're paying and they know what you're giving them for the price that you're charging. Again, that's just a little small thing. I'll just talk about some of the fun things that I've done. One of the things that always makes a wedding fun is being able to meet a bride that is just cool. I actually met like an Evel Knievel daredevil type of a bride one time, and so she was like, we don't want our wedding to be typical. We're going to do some of the typical things, but we're going to end with a big splash. And little did I know she was actually going to jump in the lake with the groom. I thought they were going to ride a motorcycle off, because that's what she did. She was like Evel Knievel. But at the end of the wedding, we set up the shot. They went bolting past us and jumped in a pond. And it was September, so the water was already starting to get cold. But I found that really entertaining. So sometimes you can suggest something like that and you may capture a great shot which sets you apart. That's one of the great things about YouTube and videography nowadays, is the fact that if you capture that shot that everybody wants to see, you are immediately launched into stardom. I think the internet is cool in that way. A person who really would have no voice in society can put forth an idea or a video and the world can see it, because what you're placing out there is of great importance if it gets seen by enough people. You can actually change the ideas and the way people move and shake. It really is that crazy how a movie has the power to change people's hearts, and change their lives and make them think differently about things. And so it's really important that you try to always get the cool shot. Take the time to set things up in such a way that you have a camera rolling. If something unique happens, that you can capture it. One of the things that I think is kind of difficult, and I don't want to get into a lot of business technicality as far as legalism goes, because I don't really know a whole lot of that stuff myself. It's funny, I've been an entrepreneur in business for myself all the time, but I realized very quickly that the laws change constantly, and what I might tell you today could be quickly changed, and there's a lot of new stuff coming out there. So in particular, when you're dealing with employees, that seems to be where a lot of controversy is coming up about how much money does a person have to earn before you give them a 1099. Do I have to cover them with work comp on the job? This is me. Take it for what it is. When I am on the job site, I have my other videographers covered with workman's compensation. You're running with the camera, you trip and fall over something, the camera busts you in the mouth, knocks your tooth out. You don't want to personally have to pay for that. Heaven forbid they fall off of something and really get injured and they're disabled and you have to pay for it. So I've just found, to me, it was much more worth it to go ahead and have liability insurance and have workman's compensation. Now, I mentioned liability insurance when I hadn't talked about it yet. I want to tell you a horror story about that so that you have a little bit more of an idea why you would need to do that. For many years, I saw no need in liability insurance because I was kind of operating as a one-man operation, and that my only partner was my brother, and my brother wouldn't sue me, so I wasn't too concerned about that. Well, I began branching out, hiring other people, and there was an occasion where I was working at the Agorama in Tifton, Georgia, and we were doing like a haunted train ride, but I don't like to do ghosts and goblins, so I thought, hey, you know what we'll do? We'll do like a Civil War reenactment. I thought that was kind of cool. It would be, a little scary to people, things popping and snapping, and so we set up a whole bunch of these like potato gun cannons. There was nothing but confetti in them, but we would set gunpowder. We would take like a quarter wrapper, fill it with gunpowder, stick it down in there with a fuse and light it, and it would pop like a cap gun and blow confetti out, and people would hoot and holler and carry on. It's a great idea. The event was going phenomenally well. We had a group of boys over there that were under the age of 18. Thought it would be funny to steal some of our gunpowder and go out in the woods and make piles of it and light them and watch them flash. We're in the midst of the event. I'm not watching it. So these guys go off, they sneak off, they take the can of gunpowder and they pour it into a Coca-Cola can so that nobody knows they have gunpowder. And then they're going around, they pour a little bit on the ground, they flash it. They were having great fun. Well, all was good until they set the woods on fire. Well, when they set the woods on fire, one of the guys had a Coca-Cola drink and was going to pour it on the drink. What he didn't realize was he picked up the can of gunpowder instead. And when he poured the gunpowder on the fire, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to say it exploded. And when it did, it burned his hand. His dad sued me for $600,000. They steal my gunpowder, and I'm liable. I didn't lose the case, but it cost me over $30,000 to defend myself. So liability insurance is well worth it if you're going to work in a professional way. There's nothing worse than representing yourself as a professional and then getting busted and put out of business because you didn't have what was adequate. So workman's compensation and liability insurance, I just make it be a must. It's not worth the risk anymore, so I just do it. You have to measure your business. If you're not planning to do it professionally, if it's just a hobby, you don't really own anything, you might want to take the risk. For me, our wife and family, it was not worth the risk. I paid the insurance. All right, some of the other things is what was the most difficult part? What caused me the most grief? It's always attitudes with clients. And here's the thing, you can head that off most of the time. Where you run into difficulty is when you don't discuss things. You make assumptions and they make assumptions in the original interviewing process, and as a result of that, you show up, their expectations aren't met, your expectations aren't met, and therefore you have a problem. What I ran into one time was I had a bride that wanted us to be able to have multiple cameras shooting at the same time, and at the end of it, we were supposed to take the cameras over to the side and we were supposed to interview a lot of the people that were there. Well, her expectation was that we were going to either make these people come do an interview or we were going to go to them and get them to interview, but she allocated us a place to do the interview. So our DJs are promoting, to go get your interview done, but we only had about 3 or 4 interviews other than some of the folks from the bridal party, and there was about 1,000 people at the event, and they were exceptionally upset that we didn't have more interviews. So to our chagrin, and what we should have clarified was the fact that, if people are going to do the interviews, it's their responsibility to get people to come to see us, not our responsibility to go convince people to do the interviews. Since that time, we've kind of adapted differently. We actually go to the table during dinner and we encourage them to have a conversation, tell a story, say thank you for the food, great wedding, glad to be here, anything. And so we've kind of overcome that. We looked at what was taking place and how we could overcome it. And that's one of the important things, is to look at it from adapt and improvise and overcome. I think that's the Marine strategy, but I think it's a great strategy as well. Always look at all the circumstances there. How can you give the client the best that you can for the money that they're spending? And if you see an opportunity, I would always rather give more and not receive than I would to cut a corner and the bride or the groom or the parents of the bride or groom feel like they didn't get their money's worth. Your reputation is what it is, and if you do a good job, you deliver a quality product, people are going to be glad they did business with you, and they're going to recommend you to their friends. Even though I do all these types of advertisement, the majority of the business that I get is when a happy bride tells a happy sister or a happy aunt or a happy cousin, hey, you need to use After Hours Productions because those guys are super to work with, and then they do a good job. You can have equal quality product with your competitor and have a really crappy attitude, and they'll take your business, or vice versa. You can be the one with the good attitude that bends over backwards to do everything to please the client, and you'll find that even sometimes with a less quality product or less equipment, that you can win the job. I took a lot of time in being able to develop an interview strategy where I can talk with a client, make them feel comfortable, be able to ask questions that bring out meaningful, elicited responses, and oftentimes end up with the bride crying as she's describing how much she loves her husband. Those sorts of things carry a lot of weight when they come back and they watch it later, because now it's meaningful to both of them. They remember those times. I use my wedding videos as a marital therapy as well. Because about 7 years into the marriage, they're sitting there looking at each other wondering, why did I marry you? Where is that guy that I used to be married to? And then go back and watch the video and remember, you know what, we used to do this and this and this and this, and I really like that guy. Maybe we should go back and do those things again. It's my marital therapy, my 2 cents worth. But every video has the potential to touch somebody. And so I think it's really important that we take what we do seriously and that you look for the best shots all the time. It gets real easy when you're on a site for an extended period of time to get lazy, to not pay attention to camera settings, to have your camera pointed at something that's irrelevant and something that is important. You personally are looking at it rather than pointing your camera at it, and that can really be a major issue. One of the other things I want to briefly deal with is attitudes of employees. That's something that you have to deal with. You have to be prepared to go to bat either for your employees if you know that the circumstances are not what they're being represented. Personal experience again would be I have a DJ who was also running the camera, who our responsibility at one point was to be in a certain place to shoot a certain thing. Well, the bride decided that she was going to go find her husband and go jump in on his shots. Well, we weren't able to capture part of what we were supposed to capture, and the mother of the bride came and chastised my employee over the fact that he wasn't with the bride. What did he do with the bride? Like he kidnapped her or something. And I had to step in and be able to say, hey, listen, it's not his fault. The bride was here and she left to go find the groom, and this is what's happening right now. So she was able to calm down. But that's the difficult part of it, is not allowing your employee to get upset and say, you stupid wench, why are you fussing at me? That's not my fault. Confrontation of that nature is really never good. It's always better to let the person that makes the decisions do the confrontationing. That way they know what's at risk if they upset the bride or the groom. So it's generally a good idea. Just remain calm, take a deep breath. You're always going to catch more flies with honey than with vinegar, and so it's really a good idea to be calm, take a step back from the situation, express it in a way that needs to be expressed, and if you still don't get any peace of mind, you still need to protect your reputation. You do the right thing all the time, regardless of the response of the client. I've walked away from money before because I knew that circumstances were going to be such that it was going to end in a bad way. All right, let's see if there's anything else. I had pretty well covered everything I wanted to say. I hate that we can't ask questions. Do I recommend videography for people? Absolutely. I think it's a great thing. I think you should videotape as much as you can because it's so cool to go back and watch things. I look back at the videography that I shot of my kids, and they're enamored by it. They love to sit and watch it and be able to say, man, I can't believe I was like that. Those funny moments when they were sleigh riding when it would snow, or when they were riding four-wheelers in the mud, fishing in the pond, skiing on the lake, any of the fun things they do. They bring back great memories, and videography is the way that happens. So it's a good opportunity to be able to capture memories, to be able to express things that are happening in your life from the past. I'll share one story and then I'm going to conclude with this. There was a bride, her mother, and a grandmother that were at a rehearsal dinner one night, and I was videotaping and interviewing the bride, and she was very talkative, and we were having a great interview. And the mother jumps in and she starts talking, and so I just made the comment, which one of you three are the better cooks? And they all deferred to grandmother. Oh, grandmother's the best cook. And I said, well, what does she do that's so much better than you guys? She says she makes biscuits. Well, when I said that, grandmother pipes in, man. She just starts going at it, talking about how she cooks her biscuits and how everybody likes to eat them and yada, 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 just on and on and on about cooking and enjoying it and all this. And I'm looking at the bride and the groom. I'm looking at the bride and the mother of the bride, and they're not saying anything. As a matter of fact, they're tearing up, and I have no idea what's going on here. So I finish the interview, we wrap it up, and the bride just comes and gives me a big hug, and the mother's just sobbing, and she says, what you don't realize is that my mother, the grandmother, had had a stroke and had not spoken to anybody in several months. And as she's sitting there, we capture her talking, and they were just absolutely enamored by the whole process. So you never know when you're going to have opportunity to capture that moment. It makes all the difference in the world. So, turn your cameras on. Make sure you have plenty of batteries, plenty of memory storage. If you need extension cords, bring extension cords. If you need external lighting, bring external lighting. Make a checklist. Go over everything. One of the things I do before I go out on the shoot is I actually set my camera up. Everything that camera needs, I set it up and physically look at it. And I do all three of my cameras that way. I shoot with some of the Canon T3Is. I've got one of those, and I got the Canon D1. So I use those cameras to shoot. But I set them all up. I have all my monitors there, my microphones there. I actually shoot a little snippet, and I make sure everything plays back right. I did have a wedding one time where I had 3 cameras on there. I grabbed one of the cameras without checking it out ahead of time, interviewed the bride and groom, went home, edited the footage, found out that the microphone was not turned on, and the whole interview footage was totally wasted. So you just don't want that sort of stuff to happen. Make sure you have all your equipment, particularly external power cables that go to supplies. If you're running your camera off of batteries, have 2 or 3 batteries and make sure they're all charged. One little trick I do is I label my batteries 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I always use them in order. So if I'm on battery 2, then I know 3 and 4 are charged and 1 needs to be charged. And so I continue to move down when I'm using battery 3, battery 4 is charged, 1 and 2 need to be charged. And so I do it that way. That way I keep up with which battery is charged and which is not. Because you get in that critical moment where they're doing the first dance, you run, grab your camera, your battery's dead, you stick another battery in there and you run to the thing and it's still dead, they're not going to stop the dance and let you go back and get your camera fixed. You just missed the footage and you got really embarrassed. So it's always a good idea to go through everything and then put each camera, lenses, covers, batteries, extension cords, cables, microphones, put all of that in one bag for that one camera. One other thing I didn't talk about, should have, is audio. The audio is so important. If your video looks phenomenal and your audio stinks, they're not going to really be happy with that either. I use a laptop with a Focusrite sound card that I can put 8 microphones in. I'll generally try to stick some microphones up somewhere in the area of the bride and groom saying the vows so that I can capture that. I always have the pastor on a wireless lapel. It would be great to mic up the bride and groom. If your bride and groom are okay with that, absolutely do it. If they're not, getting a couple of microphones in the area with windscreens on them, because it can get really noisy if you're doing outside wedding. Get some windscreens on, a couple of pencil condenser microphones. You can generally pick up a good amount of audio. Make sure that your audio track then syncs all of your video to it. It's just a lot better way to do it. So use one audio track and sync everything. That way you have the opportunity to take footage that might not be straight of the wedding. Like this happens periodically. I'm shooting camera 1, camera 2, and I'm actually running 2 cameras, and I have a 3rd camera operator on something else. And I get to the point where I need to transition and stop one camera and start it over and go to the other one and start and stop it. And I get detained and I can't make it over. So I end up with both cameras being off at the same time, and I miss some footage. I generally will, during the wedding, I'll shoot some footage of the audience. And I do that strictly for filler. If I get to a point where my cameras were off, but my audio is still running, during those moments where my cameras were off, I'm actually shooting footage from the audience or I'll shoot the cake table or something relevant nearby that I can then interject back in there so that the bride and groom never know that was a problem. The audience is the best thing to use. If you use the cake or something else, it seems out of place. Why would you show the cake right there in the middle of the wedding? But to see the expression of somebody on their face, particularly if you see like the mother, if you capture her in a moment of emotion, those are great times to be able to inject those footages. Well, anyway, I hope that this has been somewhat informative. I hope I haven't wasted your time. My name is Nick. I'm from After Hours Productions, and I wish you guys the best in your business. If you choose to contact me, I'm at afterhoursproductions.com. My email address is nick@afterhoursproductions.com. Or you can call me at 800-417-7206. That's 800-417-7206. I'll be glad to chat with you about it. I'm not an expert on equipment. I can tell you what I use and what works, talk about lighting and sound, those sorts of things, and I'd be more than glad to help you at any point. So I hope you're the best, wish you the best, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.